You ever deeply question what your truth is? I'm trying to go to bed. My husband's sleeping, my baby's sleeping, and I'm just like racking my brain with like, what is my truth? Yeah, I've been working on all sorts of things, and I've had so many different goals and different dreams, and I've learned so many new skills. And I was just writing down, you know, my offer, and I'm going back and forth in my mind. I'm like, but do I really want to do that? So here's what I've been working on. I've been working on a SaaS agency that can create websites and do automations and create AI agency, AI receptionists and chat widgets, and can text customers or businesses directly from the whole CRM. And I've spent the last 2.5 months going deep into it, watching all the videos, practicing, testing things. And that led me to the question of like, how do I sell this? So more recently, in this past week, I've learned how to sell and how to use the language, and I'm taking a course on it, and I'm developing that skill. And it brought me back to like, well, what's my offer? Like, I got to be able to pin it, and that brought me back to, is that something I actually want to do? Do I truly believe within myself and know with myself that I am fully aligned with it? Do I want to move forward? And as I went to do the Alex Hormozi method of how to create $100 million offer, his method is simply put, write out every single problem that you can think of that your prospect may be um, in having, experiencing. Some that they know, some that they don't know. And I wrote out garage door business owners. And I captioned it as more leads. I was like, I've never solved that problem before. I've heard about how to solve it. I've watched videos on what systems can be used to solve it, but I have not personally solved that question. And I truly believe that I would be capable of learning how to solve it. I feel like I'm much closer to knowing how to solve it now than I was 2 months ago. But I remember Alex Ramosi saying best entrepreneurs solve the problems that they've already solved for themselves. So I asked myself, like, well, Phoebe, what problems have you solved for yourself? And immediately the first one that came up was, well, I've solved budgeting quite in depthly. And I wrote all my solutions and how budgeting our finances, mine and my husband's finances, has really helped us out and allowed us to live the current life that we are living, because we weren't here 2 years ago. I wasn't this financially literate 5 years ago or 10 years ago, however far you want to go back. I've I've learned to solve this level of budgeting, because obviously there are a plethora of higher levels that I've yet to reach, and you can't solve a problem that you haven't reached yet. So I was also thinking about it, and I was like, okay. And then my baby woke up, and I got up and I went and nursed her and put her back to sleep, and lying there deep in thought, I'm like, what is my truth? truly. And I was reminiscing on a thought process I was experiencing this past week of talking to James, my husband. I'm being like, we should start a podcast. It'd be really cool. We could talk about our life and the things that we've experienced, and we could put little plugs for our businesses because he's also jumping on the web design stuff with me, and it would be so cool to share. And I truly think, and I inspire that may happen. But I'm lying in bed and I'm like, why don't I just do it? He works, and today he worked, 13 hours. So he's wired. He's tired. He's not gonna. He's gotta get up at 5:30 or 4 o'clock and be going to work for 5:30 again. Um, there's no time like the present to do it. So I guess that's what I'm doing is filming my first podcast, and what's really coming up for me is like, what is my truth? Which is such a deep question to ask, and I feel like it's an ongoing lesson to learn in life, because this life is just always teaching you something, and that's something that I have adapted into my life model. Is that I am a student of life. There's always something to learn. And I've read books and I've watched podcasts and I've had extensive conversations about the lessons and different scenarios and different experiences and reflection and all of it and how it's all so intertwined, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating. It absolutely blows my mind. It gets my brain tingling. I get so excited about it because it's so vast. So yeah, what is my truth? Well, I'm a human being on Earth. My name is Phoebe Deshane Natum and married Yordi. I am a mom of one daughter. I'm a wife. I am a living human woman experiencing life. I've created a family. I was born to a family. Obvious truths. And yet, so lost. I imagine that's what most people feel like, is lost. I've heard it be said many times, like, pick one thing and do it and get really good at it. Just do it and do it, do it, do it, do it. But what if you don't know what that thing is? What do you do then? Do you do the one thing over and over again that you think you want to do and then get so deep into it and realize, oh, I don't want to do that anymore? Because I've been there. Or do you just push through and continue doing it and learn more and let it evolve? That's a question. I don't think I know the answer for myself right now. It's been really interesting this past year. My baby's almost 1 year old now. And when I reflect on who I was, this time last year, I was over 9 months pregnant and living in my hometown, which I do still live there part time. It's a little village that I absolutely adore, and I love the people in it, and everybody is so supportive. And it has its small town quirks, but it also has its small town joy and liveliness. Something that I really cherish. But I think about who I was at that point, and I was just waiting for the next chapter, waiting for my baby to get here. I didn't have anything else going on. I had no idea what birth was going to be like. I had an idea what motherhood would be like, and yet it changed so much after having my baby. And birth was such a beautiful experience. And I feel like each day has been the catalyst to who I am becoming. And when I think about me a year ago, and if I would have imagined where it would be today, I don't think I could have conceptualized it. I couldn't have foreseen the growth that would have happened, that has happened in the past 365 days, if we want to get down to the exact date, March 25th, I think it is. I don't even know my days. I guess, like, it's a long journey to know your truth. And each moment is a piece of that puzzle. I have a lot of conversations, or I used to have a lot of conversations. My lifestyle has changed a little bit in these last few months. But I would go and visit a plethora of people in my hometown. And I would just tell them my life experience. And I'd hear their life experience and be able to connect with them, which I found was so deeply honoring. Like, thank you to every single person that I have been able to talk to and share my experience and hear their experience and bond over similar life lessons, or um, even just laughs and perceptions of life and acceptance of where people have been and where people are going. I think it's a really undervalued aspect of life is human connection. But I would go over to these people's houses and I'd bring my baby and sit down and have coffee or have a tea and catch up, I guess, what you would say. Cultivate relationships. And I really, yeah. So I lived in a tent for 4 months in Texas and supported my husband in creating his first official business. It was really hard living in that uncertainty, living in a state where we didn't have a home, technically. We didn't have, now we have this apartment, but every day we went back and we slept on an air mattress in a tent. And I had faith in my husband. And I supported him and encouraged him and did a lot. But before that, I lived at a camper. And did odd jobs for the local community to be able to buy food and just be a human, I guess. And essentially, right? I picked beer cans out of a dump to pay for gas, and buy dog food. Prior to that, I lived in a small house in Washington, the state, and I really learned what it was like to be in solitude in a peaceful way. I learned what it was like to sit with myself and look at what had been affecting me and process emotions that had been pent up for so many years. Prior to that, I lived in BC with my family, with my parents and my siblings, and I worked at a manufacturing warehouse building pallets and stacking pallets and wrapping pallets and stickering pallets and all of that, where I learned how to do a boring job over and over and over again and use it to my advantage, to listen to podcasts and internalize it and find the meditative peace in doing a repetitive task for hours on end. Prior to that, I lived back in my hometown. Circle back where I purged. I deeply purged emotions again. And I brought it all up. I'd have those conversations with my grandma, whom I love dearly. She calls herself a witch, and I truly believe that she is one. A wise lady she is. And before that, I lived in a den to repiling, which is still by far my favorite job that I have ever worked. And I strongly encourage anybody to get out there and plant trees. It is so deeply healing in so many ways. That is where I've discovered a little bit of who I was and who I am and who I want to be. Before that, I lived in BC again, and for the first time, I ranched. I was a little rancher lady, which was amazing. Waking up for 7 a.m. and getting out there, being outside, and taking in the gorgeous landscape of mountains and watching the sunrise over into the valley and seeing the rain come over the mountains and big cloud and falling and smelling the air of cows, getting in a tractor, plowing the fields and wrapping up barbed wire and throwing pipe and raking leaves alongside my sister, one of my sisters, which was a work experience that I would relive. It meant so much working with her. Before that, I was in Quebec and just getting to know my extended family, getting to know some of the origin of me and where I came from and the way that they extend a hand for what anybody. We pulled my cousin on a snowstorm on a hill, saw that a guy had hit the bank because it was a really steep hill and it's super slippery and tons of ice. And I think we were just on our way to go get some poutine at the local restaurant. He's like, "Oh, I should stop and help that guy." So he gets out and gets his rope and hooks him out and yanks him out. And it's just like, yeah, human kindness, generosity, giving your service to those who are in need. And then we just went on. Before that, I was living in Thunder Bay, Ontario, at my apartment, my very first apartment that I had with my older brother. And at the time, my younger brother was living with us too. And I worked at a sawmill, which I worked there for a whole year. And I was committed. I did it every day. Get up, go to work, stack some wood, listen to music, and put podcasts in. And I learned a little bit of heavy duty mechanics and learned a little bit of carpentry. Really, I learned that you can just work a job and turn your brain off. You can decide not to think and just do that thing over and over and over again. 7 to 3, 7 to 5, whatever it was, and get off and either hang out with friends or do nothing at all. I learned a lot of lessons that year. Some lessons that just cracked right open the following years. Prior to living in my apartment, I lived in this tiny little shack at my auntie and uncle's. And I lived there in the winter time, which I loved that too. I'd go to work and I'd work at a restaurant and a fast food restaurant and come home and shower, chat with them, and I'd go out to this little shack. Had a bed, had a TV, had a couple bins of my clothes, and I wouldn't do much. Just watch TV and scroll on my phone, smoke weed, do it all over again the next day. But I was figuring it out. Prior to that, I lived in Upsala for a short time again, and that summer, it's the first summer that I moved out. I was 18 years old. I moved out the day I graduated high school. I say graduated high school because I don't really think I actually graduated. I got a diploma, but it's just a paper to me. And yeah, I worked 2 jobs. I had very little time that I wasn't doing something, either working at a gas station, the restaurant, or working at the park, the local park, painting with one of my best childhood friends. That I took that job so that I could see her, spend time with her that summer. Lived in that same camper. at some point I decided I would go to BC, I'd travel. I had a car, have whom I just let go of, and I realized like, oh, I've got to figure out how much money I want to spend now that I've got to buy food and I'm paying for my phone and I'm paying for my car, things that I already paid for, but I'm working two jobs and I'm not earning that much. I was kind of aware of that. And I have to put money aside to go and travel, and I don't want to spend all my money, but I also wanted to do these things that cost money. So I wrote myself out like a $500 budget that I could never stick to. Never did. I don't think I actually did. But I did it anyways. I wrote it out and I was like, I'm going to figure out what I want to eat and what I want to bring for lunch and how am I going to make my dinners. And I remember that was like really hard. I'd work and then I'd be like, well, I don't want to cook tonight. So I'm not going to eat tonight. Or I'll just make something really simple. Oh, but I feel a little lazy and I don't want to wash my dishes. Simple things like that. But I preferred to binge watch TV or doom scroll on my phone than to, in my perspective, do anything productive, which for me would be like journaling or learning a new skill or educating myself on something. Um, I was just experiencing this new level of freedom that was um, the word that's coming up is intoxicating, but I feel like that's a pretty I can have a negative condensation. I can have a negative understanding. However, it was a taste of freedom that I deeply enjoyed. A freedom within myself. I went on that BC trip and I remember making lists of everything that I would need and mapping out every single detail of where I could drive and how far I would drive. I had like penciled out on this map that I bought, and I wrote down all the camps that I would stay at, and I packed way more than I needed. Um, bins of clothes and everything like that. And you know what? I didn't pack a cooler for food. I didn't think about it. I probably packed like 20 pairs of socks, and I didn't bring a hatchet or an axe, which was like such a like, oh my gosh, Phoebe, really? Like you go winter camping, you go summer camping, you go and chop down trees all the time, but you understand that to build a fire, you need an axe. And I had no conceptualization that you can't just go cut down a tree in a provincial park to make firewood. Like, that's not a thing. It seems like common sense, but for me, I just walk out in the backyard, cut down a tree. Okay, this is good. Bam, let's burn it. But I went on this trip, and the first day, I drove 10 hours all the way to Manitoba to Riding Mountain Provincial Park. Um, and I went to the wrong park. I went to the walking park, the walking trail, instead of the camp park. Now, this park, by the time that I got there, the sun was setting, it was getting dark, and it had really, really poor service. And I was filled with anxiety. I'm like, oh my God, like I don't know where I am. Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I'm in the middle of nowhere. I don't know anybody. And I was like, but let me stop and go look at this lookout. I'm not gonna walk anywhere because I don't know where I'm going, and it's already late, and I've been driving all day. But let me just go and look at the beauty. And I did, and it was gorgeous, gorgeous trees. The sun was going down. It was light blue, pink skies, and I was proud of myself for having the courage to go out there. And I was like, well, where are we going to stay? And I drove down and punched it into my maps, like looking for a campground, and I found some space, and I slept in my car that night. In the back, out of bed, made curtains for my windows. And I woke up in the middle of the night to me, like trying to get into my front seat to drive, sleep. And I was like, woke up and I was like, what am I doing? Go back to bed. So I got back into bed, and the next morning I was like, okay, where am I going next? I hit the road, got some breakfast, grabbed a coffee, played my tunes, and I smoked, cigarettes, and I drove all the way to Red Deer, Alberta that day. Went through Saskatchewan, drove through literally in the middle of nowhere, Alberta. Like genuinely had no idea where I was, and I mispunched my maps, and I had like no idea. And I was just like, well, I hope I ran up somewhere. I got enough gas, you know. Um, and I drove on my first 2-lane highway and went through my first really busy roundabout, and I had no idea how to manage that, and I was freaking out. I was like, I don't know where I'm going. How do I turn? There's so many people. Eventually I made it to my campsite and set up my tent and pulled out my cook stove, and I was like, let's go for a walk. I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified to walk anywhere. So nervous. And I put my backpack on and everything. And I was like, let's go. Terrified. I literally walked for 20 minutes, then went back to my camp. I was like, oh, I should go buy food, and figured out how to get to Walmart. And then was so nervous just walking in Walmart. Like, what am I going to buy? Well, gotta make these decisions. I stayed about 2 nights there, and I was like, okay, next place. So I drove to Canmore, Alberta, up in the mountains, which, like, I remember seeing those Rocky Mountain mountains for the first time and being in tears at the gorgeousness of it, like tears. And I was probably like 2 hours away from it. And I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. Wow, this exists in the world. Um, I stayed at that camp for about 6 days, and I did a few hiking trails. I went to Lake Louise, and I got some photos, and I just remembered like being out there, but I'm like, what am I doing? Who am I? What do I like? Do I have personality? I just had no idea who I was. And I remember sitting down and journaling and not even knowing what questions to ask myself. I was so stumped. And I just like Googled what are questions you ask yourself to get to know yourself? And it's like, what do you like? What do you want to do? Who are you closest to? Who supports you in life? And I got maybe half a page. Not even like it was just like 5 different sections with like 3 things underneath them. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's good. But as I was driving back to my campsite at Lake Louise, I like had a really big emotional breakdown. And I just felt so ready to go back home. I remember like calling my mom and telling her about it and her being there for me. Um, but when I reflect about it, it's just like I was so uncomfortable being in the unknown that I didn't know what else to do. And I just wanted to feel comfortable again. So, what felt comfortable was the little village I grew up in that I knew. I went to my aunt's in Alberta, in Edmonton, Alberta, like the following day, and I stayed a couple days with them and just processed them and got to know my great aunt and my great uncle a little bit, which was fun. They're really great people. I hung out with one of my friends that I knew was out there, and I think I was gone a total of like 12 days. And the day I was ready to go, I left at 4 a.m. and I drove 20 hours straight. I stopped maybe 6 times, a handful of times to get gas, and a handful of times to pee. And I arrived back in Uppsala at 2 a.m. That day, I drank 10 Red Bull, 2 coffees, ate 1 Caesar wrap, ate some trail mix and like a chocolate bar, and smoked a lot of cigarettes and listened to a lot of podcasts. I actually called my mama that day too while I was in Saskatchewan, and I didn't have any AC in my car. It was plus 22 Celsius outside, and my car was hot, and I couldn't open up the windows because I couldn't hear my mama. So I just sat there chatting with her for like 40 minutes, sweating, like pools of sweat. And uh, yeah, I got back, and I was like just so proud of myself for doing that. It was really scary and filled with so many things I didn't know. And like at some point, like my debit card stopped working, and I didn't understand how credit cards worked. And all I had was like some cash and um, so unbelievably unprepared. Which I think honestly is kind of what life does. Is like you think you know something, and then this whole other situation comes about, and you have no idea what's going on. And you realize like, oh yeah, I don't know anything, and this is going to teach me it. It was a really big lesson, and I learned so much from it to muster the courage to do it that I actually got it like tattooed on my shoulder. I got mountains on my shoulder, and the amount of kilometers I drove on my own on my first trip of solo traveling. That is a truth that I've lived. And from that point, it kind of like opened up this pathway of the deeper desire of wanting to experience all that life has for me. And since then, I have experienced hundreds of new lessons, and each feel like a stepping stone. Um, so I guess that's kind of like what I'm doing now. Still, I'm in these moments of I'm not entirely sure what to do. I'm not entirely sure who I'm becoming again. I feel like a death of self is always occurring, and a birth of self was emerged. What is my truth? Well, I'm going to learn it. I'm learning it. I have learned it. Uh, from that, though, I've learned that courage is very powerful. And just because you don't know, that doesn't mean it should stop you. So, what is my truth? I guess with Phoebe Yordi. Anyways, I'm going to go to bed now. I'm going to wake up tomorrow. And I'm going to experience another day. Yeah. Good night.